A thick mist hovered over the lake of shadows like a morning veil, wrapping the dark waters in a silence that seemed alive, pulsing with ancient secrets. The surrounding trees, twisted and stripped of leaves, stretched their branches like skeletal, fingers pointing at the ashen sky. In Los Angeles, a forgotten village deep in the United States countryside, the lake was more than just a natural formation. It was a place of legends, of stories whispered at night when the lights went out and the wind carried echoes of something that should never be heard. They said the lake was not merely deep, but infinite, that its waters held something beyond human, understanding, something that watched, something that waited, and above all, that within it lived the girl of the lake, an entity as old as the earth itself, whose hollow eyes could see straight into the soul of anyone who dared come near. No one knew for sure when the stories began. Some said the girl was a drowned child, the victim of a heinous crime. Others believed she had never been human at all, but rather a spirit born from the darkness of the lake, a force that fed on fear and guilt. What everyone agreed on, however, was that crossing her path was an invitation to death, or something far worse. It was in this setting that 4 different souls, each driven by their own reasons, converged on the Lake of Shadows. Each carried their own demons, but none of them were prepared for what they would face. And at the center of it all, the girl of the lake was waiting for them, with a smile that did not belong to this world. The dirt road leading to Los Angeles was riddled with potholes, nearly swallowed by the dense vegetation that seemed determined to reclaim the path. The bus rattled along, its tires groaning over loose stones, while the driver, a man with weathered skin and tired eyes, kept his gaze fixed ahead, as if afraid to look away for even a second. At the back of the bus, Clara Menezes, a 32-year-old journalist, gripped her notebook tightly, as if it were an anchor against the discomfort of the journey. Her brown hair was tied in a messy bun, and her black-framed glasses slid down her nose as she read over hastily scribbled notes. Clara had come from São Paulo, driven by an obsession to uncover the truth behind the legends of the Lake of Shadows. She didn't believe in ghosts, but she believed in stories and stories. She knew always hid truths. Her career was in decline after a scandal involving an unreliable source, and she needed something big, something that would put her back on the map. The Lake of Shadows, with its tales of disappearances and inexplicable phenomena, was her last shot. A few seats ahead, Gabriel Costa, a 28-year-old freelance photographer, adjusted the lens of his camera, capturing images of the desolate landscape through the fogged-up window. Gabriel was a restless man, with green eyes that always seemed to be searching for something even he couldn't name. He had come to Los Angeles for a different reason, a recurring nightmare. For months, every night, he dreamed of a dark lake, a blurred figure in the water, and a child's voice whispering his name. He told no one, but the pull of the lake was so strong that he had abandoned a lucrative contract to come here. Something deep inside him said that if he didn't come, the dreams would never stop. Sitting next to Clara, without exchanging a single word with her, was Marina Lopes, a 40-year-old psychologist with a grief-hardened expression. Marina was a woman of few words, with prematurely gray hair and eyes that seemed to carry the weight of a tragedy. She had come to Los Angeles in search of answers about the disappearance of her daughter, Alice, who had vanished from the village 2 years earlier, at the age of 15. The police had closed the case, claiming Alice had likely run away from home, but Marina knew that was a lie. Her daughter would never have left without a word. The lake, she felt it in her bones, had something to do with it. Marina didn't believe in legends, but she did believe in a mother's intuition. Finally, in the seat closest to the door, sat Tomás Ribeiro, a 55-year-old priest whose black cassock seemed to absorb the little light that came through the windows. Tomás had a stern appearance, with deep wrinkles etched into his face and hands that trembled slightly, as if they carried a secret he dared not confess. He had been sent by the diocese to investigate reports of supernatural phenomena in the village, but his true motivation was personal. Decades earlier, as a young seminarian, Tomás had visited Los Angeles and witnessed something at the lake, something that had marked him forever. He had never spoken about it, not even in confession. But now, with the rumors growing louder, he knew he had to return. not to save the village, but to save himself. The 4 passengers stepped off the bus in the central square of Los Angeles, where the air smelled of damp earth and decay. The village was small, with weathered wooden houses and dirt roads. The few residents, wary and silent, watched the outsiders with eyes that held a mixture of curiosity and fear. The lake was only a few kilometers away, hidden in the forest, but its presence was felt in every corner of the village inn. The oppressive silence, in the wind that seemed to whisper, in the feeling that something unseen was watching them. The inn where the 4 stayed was a decrepit building with mold-stained walls and furniture that creaked with every movement. Donna Inns, the innkeeper, was an elderly woman with sunken eyes and a smile that never reached her gaze. "Don't go to the lake at night," she warned, handing over the room keys. "The girl doesn't like visitors after sunset." Clara rolled her eyes but wrote the phrase down in her notebook. Gabriel, on the other hand, felt a chill run down his spine. Marina simply nodded, as if she had already heard the warning before, while Tomas clutched the crucifix around his neck and whispered a silent prayer. That night, the 4 gathered in the inn's common room, drawn by a coincidence none of them could ignore. They all felt a connection to the lake, even if for different reasons. Clara, always pragmatic, suggested they work together. "If we're going to investigate the lake, we'd better do it as a group. Alone, I'm not sure we'd have the courage." Gabriel agreed, intrigued by the journalist and the chance to capture something extraordinary with his camera. Marina accepted, on the condition that their search include any clues about Alice Tomas. Reluctant, eventually gave in, but made it clear that his priority was to confront evil, not feed it. The next morning, they set out for the lake. The trail was narrow, flanked by trees that seemed to lean in, as if trying to overhear their conversations. The air grew colder as they approached, and the sound of birds vanished, replaced by a silence that weighed on their shoulders. When they finally reached the shore, the lake revealed itself in full, a vast surface of black water, so still it looked like a mirror reflecting the overcast sky. Clara was the first to approach, taking photos with her phone. "It's just a lake," she said, trying to convince herself. But something felt wrong. The water didn't reflect her face, only the sky, as if she wasn't really there. Gabriel, adjusting his camera, noticed something strange in the images. Indistinct shapes appeared in the photos, even when he aimed the lens at empty areas. Marina, meanwhile, stood still, staring at the water with an intensity that unsettled the others. "She's here," she whispered. Without explaining who she was, Tomas, clutching his Bible, began to recite a prayer in Latin, but his voice faltered when a sound echoed from the lake, a low gurgle, as if something were rising from the depths. The 4 of them turned at the same time, and that's when they saw her for the first time. She was at the center of the lake, partially submerged, with long black hair floating around her head like strands of algae. Her face was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes were black holes, empty voids that seemed to swallow the light around them. She didn't move, just stared at them, and yet the fear radiating from her presence was tangible, like an electric current. "Humming through the air," Clara screamed, dropping her phone. Gabriel tried to take a photo, but the camera shut off on its own. Marina stepped forward, as if hypnotized, while Tomas dropped to his knees, mumbling incoherent words. Then, as suddenly as she had appeared, the girl of the lake sank beneath the water, leaving only ripples that quickly faded away. The 4 returned to the inn in silence, each one processing what they had witnessed. Clara tried to rationalize it, saying it might have been an optical illusion, but her voice trembled. Gabriel reviewed the photos on his camera, but every image of the lake was blurry, as if a mist had seeped into the sensor. Marina was convinced the girl was a sign, a clue about Alice, while Tomas insisted they had encountered something demonic, something that needed to be exorcised. That night, as they tried to sleep, strange things began to happen. Clara woke to the sound of dripping water, but her room was completely dry. Gabriel dreamed of the girl, but this time she was inside the inn, standing at the foot of his bed, whispering his name. Marina found a child's drawing in her bag, a crude sketch of a girl with black eyes, holding the hand of another figure that resembled Alice Tomas. Meanwhile, was haunted by memories of his first visit to the lake, when, as a young man, he had seen the girl for the first time and fled, abandoning a friend who was never seen again. The next day, they decided to return to the lake, but this time with a plan. Clara brought an audio recorder. Gabriel adjusted his camera with a new lens. Marina carried a photo of Alice, and Tomas brought a flask of holy water and a rosary. They were determined to confront the girl, but what they found was something entirely unexpected. As they explored the shoreline, Gabriel stumbled upon something buried in the mud. It was a metal box, rusted but intact. Inside was a diary, written in childish handwriting. The pages detailed the life of a girl named Livia, who had lived in Los Angeles decades earlier. She wrote about the lake, how it spoke to her, promising impossible things. The final entries were disturbing, describing visions of another girl who lived in the water and wanted Livia to join her. The twist came when Clara, flipping through the diary, found a photograph pasted to the last page. It was an image of Livia, a girl with black hair and large eyes, identical to the figure they had seen in the lake. But what left them paralyzed was the date on the photo, 1923. The girl of the lake wasn't just any spirit. She had been real once, and somehow she was still there, bound to the lake, waiting. The discovery of the diary changed everything. Clara dove into research, interviewing the village's oldest residents, who were hesitant to speak, but eventually revealed fragments of a forgotten story. Livia was an orphan who had lived with a foster family in Los Angeles. She was strange, they said, always talking to herself, always drawn to the lake. One day, she disappeared, and the village assumed she had drowned. But the elders whispered another version. Livia had indeed drowned. She had been sacrificed. According to the legend, the village faced a devastating drought in the 1920s. Desperate, the villagers turned to an ancient ritual, guided by a healer who claimed the lake demanded a sacrifice to restore the water. Livia, a child without family, was chosen. They took her to the lake at night, bound her hands, and threw her into the water while chanting hymns to appease whatever dwelled beneath. The drought ended days later, but Livia was never forgotten. She returned, not as a girl, but as something else, something that avenged. As Clara pieced everything together, Marina began to have visions. In her dreams, she saw Alice, but not as her daughter. Alice appeared pale, with black eyes, calling her toward the lake. "Mommy, come with me," she would say, in a voice that wasn't hers. Marina woke up screaming, but the visions only grew stronger until she began to question her own sanity. Gabriel, meanwhile, discovered something even more disturbing. While going through his camera, he found a photo he didn't remember taking. It was an image of the lake, but in the corner barely visible, there was a figure. It wasn't the girl, but a man in a black cassock, staring directly into the camera. He showed the picture to Tomas, who turned pale. "That's not possible," he murmured. "I was alone that night," Tomas then confessed. Decades ago, when he was still a seminarian, he and a friend named Matthias had gone to the lake to investigate the rumors. Matthias entered the water, drawn by something Tomas couldn't see. He screamed for help, but Tomas, terrified, fled. Matthias was never found, and Tomas had carried the guilt ever since. He believed the photo was a warning. The girl of the lake knew what he had done, determined to end the curse. The four decided to perform a ritual to appease the girl. Tomas led the group, using his experience as a priest, though his faith was shaken. He felt that the girl was not merely a vengeful spirit, but something older, something that transcended good and evil. Still, he prepared a circle of salt at the edge of the lake, sprinkled holy water, and began to recite prayers. Meanwhile, Clara and Gabriel investigated the village, searching for more clues. They discovered that the healer who had led Livia's sacrifice still had descendants in Los Angeles. One of them, a woman named Dona Clara, ironically the same name as the journalist, confessed that her grandmother, the healer, had left behind a book of rituals. In it were instructions for sealing the lake, but also a warning. Livia's sacrifice was not the first, and it would not be the last. The lake demanded a life every generation, and the villagers, out of fear, obeyed. The second twist came when Marina, examining the book, found a list of names. Among them was Alice's. Marina broke down, screaming that her daughter couldn't be dead, but the book suggested something worse. Alice wasn't sacrificed, she was chosen. According to the book, the girl of the lake didn't kill her victims. She transformed them, made them part of herself, part of the lake. Marina refused to believe it, but the visions of Alice with black eyes returned with force, and she began to hear her daughter's voice even while awake. That night, during the ritual, everything went wrong. The girl appeared again, but this time, she wasn't alone. Indistinct figures emerged from the water shadows with familiar faces. Matthias, Alice, and other victims of the lake throughout the years. They didn't speak, but their black eyes locked onto the floor as if passing judgment. Tomas tried to continue the ritual, but the holy water evaporated in his hands, and the salt circle blew apart with a sudden wind. Clara screamed as she saw her own reflection in the water with black eyes as if the lake was showing her what she would become. Gabriel, panicked, tried to run but tripped and fell into the water. When Clara and Marina pulled him back, he was shaking, saying he had seen something in the depths, not the girl, but a void, a living darkness that called to him. She's not just the girl, he whispered. The lake is her. The four were now divided. Clara wanted to expose the truth, publish everything, and warn the world. Marina was obsessed with saving Alice 7, if it meant confronting the girl directly. Gabriel, traumatized, just wanted to leave, but the nightmares followed him, now more vivid, with the girl whispering that he belonged to the lake. Tomas, consumed by guilt, believed the only solution was to offer himself as a sacrifice in hopes of appeasing the entity. The third twist came on the final night. As they planned their next move, Marina vanished. They found her standing in the lake glassy-eyed, holding a photo of Alice. But now, the photo showed two figures, Alice and the girl, holding hands. When Clara tried to pull her back, Marina turned on, her eyes were black, just like the girl's. "She's my daughter now," Marina said, in a voice that wasn't hers. Before diving into the lake and disappearing disparate, Clara, Gabrielle, and Tomas decided to burn the ritual book, hoping to break the cycle. But as they did, the lake reacted. The water began to bubble, and the girl emerged, now wearing the faces of Marina, of Alice, of Livia, of all the victims. She didn't speak, but her presence was a silent accusation. Tomas, in a final act of redemption, walked into the water, holding his crucifix. "Forgive me," he whispered. Before being pulled into the depths, Clara and Gabriel ran, but the lake followed. The dreams continued, the visions intensified, and objects from the lake shells, algae, even Livia's photograph began appearing in their rooms. Clara tried to publish the story, but her laptop erased all the files. Gabriel threw away his camera, but the photos returned, now showing himself with black eyes. Months later, Los Angeles was quieter than ever. Dona Inz's Inn had closed, and the villagers avoided speaking of the lake. Clara and Gabriel were never seen again, but some say that on nights with a full moon, you can still hear their screams echoing from the water. The Lake of Shadows remains untouched, its calm surface hiding the secrets it carries. And in the depths, the girl of the lake waits, her black eyes watching, her smile promising that no one escapes forever.